There's a movement brewing, and that movement is the Me Total lifestyle.
It centers around you keeping your sense of self intact and in gaining clarity of purpose as you age. I'm Carrie.
I'm Joe.
I'm JM.
And we're on a mission to show you how to enjoy friends, fellowship, and life without substance dependence.
It's time to discover how you can begin living a Me Total lifestyle.
Right here on the FUZZEE'ish podcast. Let's go.
JM, we just got off with Willie McKenzie, who's an owner, operator, proprietor in the space up in Michigan in the cannabis industry. Longtime recovering drug addict, and just overall good guy. What did you have to think about this episode?
Honestly, I can't think of a guest that we've had that sort of encompasses all aspects of what we want to talk about on this show as directly as Willie does. To have a story like his, particular to addiction and drugs and alcohol and rehab and failed rehab and even harder rehab, to come out and ultimately be as successful as he's been for 12 years. He says February 25th will be 12 years. So we're recording this on February 23rd. He's 2 days away from that. It's just super impressive. And the reality is he embodies his life. His conviction is built around a really similar idea to our Me Total mantra. And that's showing up and being the best version of himself on a daily basis and doing all the things that he can. And then as an aside, he also is a sugar junkie like me and gave me some ideas around how I can kick my sugar addiction as well. So I'm looking forward to try to put that in practice. But I would be really surprised if that's the only time that we have him on this show. And I'd be even more surprised if we are not working really closely with him on the various things that we have in flight specific to the other business, Fuzzy Water, as the months and years ahead pursue. Yeah,
I really enjoyed how he talked about, living for his family and some of the issues that he had, pre-losing a bunch of weight. I think, that's another thing that we get into sometimes. We don't talk about it as much, but we typically talk about substance abuse, recovery, stuff like that. But, I've battled weight issues my whole life, and I've gone in and out of heavier phases and thinner phases and stuff like that. And more recently, my decision to quit drinking alcohol was related to doctor's advice and doctor's orders and stuff like that. So really impressive to see him do what he's done, transforming his body and getting down 100 plus pounds over the course of the last few years. So kudos to Willie. Pleasure to have him on. Willie McKenzie is a husband, father, and serial entrepreneur. He currently serves as CEO of Left Coast Holdings, a vertically integrated cannabis company based in Michigan. He's also the founder of the Elite Cannabis Operators Mastermind and the Men of Purpose Group. Willie is an addict in recovery, coming up on 12 years clean on Sunday, and has lost 100 pounds in recovery. Welcome back to the FUZZEE'ish podcast. I'm your host for today, Joe Quattrone, and with me, as always, is my partner, JMG, and we have a special guest today. We have Willie McKenzie of Left Coast Holdings and Elite Cannabis Operators. Willie, say hi to everybody.
What's up, guys? How are we doing today?
Very good, very good. And so, Willie, me and you have been connected for a while on LinkedIn, and I've consumed a lot of your content. And you really go pretty deep. You've had a pretty miraculous story of addiction recovery. So why don't we just start there? I mean, my audience doesn't really know a ton about you, but except for what I already read in the bio. But I believe you started as a farmer, if I'm not correct, and eventually moved your way into the cannabis industry. How does one go from an agricultural major in college, living in NorCal, to living in Michigan and running cannabis companies?
Yeah. So, I do have a background in agribusiness from Cal Poly. I've never actually used that. Well, I never finished that degree because I became a drug addict and I left school, just a few units shy of actually getting my piece of paper. So, I have a background in construction. I've built, a couple of large construction companies in the Bay Area. And, kind of the kindred spirit to being a contractor is being a dope grower. And so I started growing cannabis like 2006, and I've always been involved in the industry since then. I got sober 2012, February 25th, 2012. So I'm coming up on 12 years on Sunday,
Wow,
actually.
man, 2 days away. Congrats. It's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, and I have been involved in cannabis cultivation pretty much the entire time. I took, a couple years off when I got sober and tried to, determine what was my relationship going to be with the plant. But ultimately decided that I felt comfortable getting back into it, and I've been going hard ever since.
All right, so let's take a 20-second before we go. Because our show really does focus on wellness and addiction and finding a better way, which clearly you have for almost 12 years. And like I said, congratulations. Do you feel comfortable to share kind of that process? So what got you to the point where you felt like you needed to get sober? And, we that's the impetus of our show. I'd love to hear more about that to help people to really learn that there's a way out. And obviously 12 years of sobriety is pretty awesome. And really, for some of us like myself, a miracle, man. So congrats.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really an open book about it. I've gotten to a point in my life and career where I'm comfortable. I don't have a boss. I don't have, I did actually check with my investors before I started speaking openly about this stuff. But so I have always been a party animal. Drugs and alcohol were the thing that, when I was 14 years old, made me fit in and join kind of that cool crowd. And so I became, I was in high school, I was Mr. Saturday Night in the senior yearbook. That was my title. I was the guy who always had booze and drugs. I sold weed through high school and college. And that was my identity, and unfortunately, the weed and the alcohol, I was a heavy drinker. Led to coke, eventually led to pills, and pills were really, my downfall. I was chewing up 25 Norco at a time. That progressed to Oxy, to a $500 a day Oxy habit, to doing whatever you have to do to support a $500 a day Oxy habit. I had a successful business, lost it because of my drug addiction, lost all my relationships because of the drug addiction, basically lost everything. And I wound up, people who loved me stepped in and did an intervention. I went to rehab a couple times. The second time I went to rehab, it was a 6-month stint at a therapeutic community where they, it's a hardline place. And that was where I really gave in and got it and started on my path to recovery. But, I had to start over my life in my 30s, $100,000 in debt, no real prospects for how to make money. People around me, people my age are becoming really successful, buying houses.
Sure.
And so that was a challenging time for me. And I'm very fortunate that I figured my way through it.
Yeah. Interesting. So we always talk about there's not a single path to sobriety. There's also very different stories, right? We always kind of joke on our show. We have another partner on our show that we call the heavyweight that probably went almost as far as you did, whereas Joe's more of the light featherweight in regards to his consumption of any alcohol and other. Yeah. And then I'm somewhere in the middle. I didn't quite get to pills, but I certainly could. I kept up with you on your story through the drinking and drugs and just it continuing to progress. And for me, it was taking bets and not selling weed, but it was, similar sort of wild world of craziness that's sort of all compounded. We talk here about me total, which is this idea that it's different for everyone. It's not a 1 and 0 thing. There are different paths to getting to a place of sobriety or at least clarity of living a better life that doesn't include substance. We talk about, AAs for some people, and for some it doesn't work at all. Obviously rehabs for some people, it doesn't work. I don't know if we've ever talked about a 6-month rehab stint. And so when you say hard line, it'd be awesome to kind of understand that better, just as the sort of what goes into a 6-month stint. And when you say hard line, what does that mean? So just to give our audience a better understanding of what can be the heavyweight solution for addiction.
Yeah. Right. So they say some are sicker than others, right? And right. I went to a 28-day program, and And when I got there and shared my story, the counselor said, this probably isn't the program for you. There is a longer term solution that you should probably be involved in. And I said, you don't know me, man. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the man, dude. Like, I don't need to be at some that place is full of homeless people and drug addicts. Like, I'm good. And I relapsed one day out of that 28-day program. So there are, 28-day programs that are kind of cushy and nice and they baby you. And then, this therapeutic community started off as an 18-month-long program for heroin addicts in the 70s. And it has since been scaled back to, it's now only 3 months. But when I was there, it was 6 months. And when you show up, you sit down on a red chair on timeout. They take you upstairs. They make you shave your beard, your facial hair. You have to go down to their donation bin, put on a suit and tie, and you work and you live there and you work in part of this community and you follow these very hardline rules that they have set. And if you step out of line, you stand in a mirror and stare yourself in the eye for increments of 15 minutes. You might stand there for 2 hours. They don't pull any punches. They crush your ego and crush you down to nothing, and then they build you back up. And for me, that's exactly what I needed. That doesn't work for everybody. Some people, don't like that really kind of intense stuff. But like I was a really, being addicted to drugs like I was is not a pretty thing. I was in the fucking ghetto. You know what I mean? Every day, freebasing oxy. And so for me to go to some like powder puff 28-day program just wasn't going to do the trick. I had to be at a place that would combat my level of addiction with that same level of recovery.
It's interesting that you mentioned that same facility is down to 3 months now. We had a gentleman on our program named Mike Hardenbrook who studies neuroscience and was talking about the neural pathways that form habit. And one thing he was talking about was this idea of 66 days. If you can make anything happen 66 days in a row, chances are it's going to be a habit, whether it's a good habit or a bad habit. It's after 66 days, it's a habit. So talk to me a little bit about the second half of your stint when you were in the 6-month facility. Do you feel like you were recovered, but you still needed like an extra 3 months to kind of live in that recovery and have like a safe landing, or what were you feeling kind of like after that like 3 month mark?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting, right? You have no contact with the outside world. You don't see the news. You don't have a phone. You get 1 5-minute phone call a week to call your family. If you fuck up, you don't get to call your family. You are engrossed in this bubble, right? You live in a bubble and it becomes your entire life. And for me, it was amazing. It's the best thing I've ever done. This is the first time in my life where I didn't have anything. There was nothing to hide behind. There was no story to tell. There was no show to put on. I didn't have drugs to give people to make them friends with me. I didn't have alcohol to provide to people to be the life of the party. It was the people who were there liked me for me. And that was, so I became very comfortable being there. I could have stayed there, like I look back on those times very fondly. And the fact that it's so long, I started doing drugs when I was 14 years old. So I stopped emotionally maturing at that point. And so when I got sober, I really didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I liked to do, because everything that I liked to do up until then involved getting fucked up, And so it was a process of figuring out who I was. Who is Willie McKenzie? What does Willie McKenzie like to do? And then, a lot of planning for reentry, because, the way I left the world, my professional life was not graceful. And I had to figure out what I was going to do on the backside of this to ensure that I didn't go back out. And so actually after that 6 months, I went into their halfway house facility too and spent another 3 months. So in total, I was with that program for 9 months, and then, aftercare for almost a year after that. So you stay close to the program. And for me, when I went the first time and they gave me advice, this is what you should do to stay sober. And I said, nah, I don't need to do that. I got this. And I fucked up, And so when I went the second time, I was so broken. I said, God, if you can help me get through this, I will do whatever you say. I will listen to these people. I will do every single thing that they tell me to do. I will do it to the T. And so I did. I followed all of their advice. And so whenever I help a lot of people go to rehab. Like I'm the guy in my familial circle and my friend circle who has gotten sober and stayed sober for a long time. So when somebody has a family member or a friend who's fucked up, I usually get the call. And it's hard for me to deal with, to see people going through what I've been through and to see them not turning it over. But I understand because it was hard for me to do. But I always recommend to people, it's like, you have to surrender to this process. Like, there are people who have been through what you're going through, who have made it through. You have to listen to them.
Do you stay in contact with any of the people that you were in the facility with? Like, not necessarily the people that were teaching the facility, but any of your people that were in there at the same time, going through the same stuff? Is there any kind of like reunion type aspect to that?
There isn't a reunion. I'm always welcome there. So I can, like, when I go home, I live in Northern Michigan now, but when I go home to California, I do swing by the house and see the people. And unfortunately, I see people sometimes who were in there when I was there, retreads, or, some of the people who were in there with me now work there. But I do have friends who I went through there with, who I still keep in contact with. And then my original counselor there was my sponsor up until a few months ago.
And not to keep going on this topic, but I'm fascinated by breaking you down, standing in front of a mirror, suiting you up, working. Is it most of these places have either like sort of a science or religion sort of foundation to them? Was it one or the other at this place? And then sort of what was the work that they were having you do? Was it specific to sort of maintaining the house, or did you have to go and teach something to others or try to be kind of more missionaries for the cause? What was the work aspect of that like?
Yeah, so there was no real religion. I mean, it is a 12-step based program. So there was, regular AA meetings, and the work you do. I mean, it's a facility that basically is run by the people who are patients there, right? I worked in the kitchen for a long time. I made breakfast every day at 5 a.m. for the family, because there could be 100 people there. And so it's a county funded program. When I left there, I owed them $1,200. I went in as a homeless person, essentially. I didn't have a bank account. I had nothing. And so in order for them to run the program, the residents take care of the place. And so, somebody runs the house. There's all these positions within, the structure there, and you kind of cycle through them. And so it's really just about maintaining the facility, and keeping the order that exists there.
Did they at least let you switch out of the suit to like the lunch lady costume to slop the eggs, or are you are you suited up for that?
I was allowed to wear a t-shirt in the kitchen.
Okay.
Because they don't want you to get, food.
Yeah, you don't want to screw up your threads. Yeah, exactly. Gotta get that. Like that always brings back the Adam Sandler lunch lady skit on Saturday Night Live, when you start thinking about like the sloppy joes and all. We could go down a path.
Sloppy Joe, sloppy Joe.
Exactly. That's right. I'm with my sloppy Joe right now.
I'm the sloppy Joe.
Yeah, exactly.
But you've got, to switch gears a little bit, on your LinkedIn profile, there's something in there and the headline that really resonates with me, and I know it probably will with JM as well. It reads, "Balancing professional drive with family values." And so obviously that sounds like a far cry from the story up until this point. Yeah. Did you meet your wife before you went into rehab, or did you meet her afterwards?
I met her afterwards. The women I met before I went to rehab, they wouldn't want to get married to me. I was not a safe bet at that point.
They probably weren't the baby mamas you wanted either. So there's probably two sides to that, right? Yeah, no, I cut you off kind of right at the transition into the life that you've lived for the last almost 12 years. So it'd be cool. Like, let's keep going. As Joe said, let's hear about
what happened when you got out of the facility. How did you go from rehab to, getting into construction? When did you meet your wife and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I had this decision when I was leaving there. They start letting you out for a couple hours to go to like a local computer lab where you can go look for a job. And I had to make a decision. I had built a business, a painting company, a construction and painting company in this kind of niche industry for homeowners associations. And it's kind of a small community of, contractors and property managers in the Bay Area who do this work for like condo complexes, homeowners associations, large apartment complexes, things like that. And so I had in my head this story that I'm ruined here. Everybody knows I'm a drug addict. I got kicked out of my own company. I'm too embarrassed to go back. And so I was like entertaining the idea of going to work at Trader Joe's, because Trader Joe's hired a lot of people from our program. And ultimately, some guys who used to work for me as painters heard that I was getting out from my mom, and they saw an opportunity to pick me up on the cheap, and help them build their business. So they were like, they had a $500,000 a year painting company. They were still themselves up on ladders every day, and they wanted to build the business. And I had built this business before to, I think when I left, we were doing $7 million a year. So I would take the bus every day from the rehab facility to this guy's house in North Oakland. And I would sit at his kitchen table on his computer, and I would write marketing material to go after, this kind of larger work. And then I would borrow his wife's car, and I would go out and I would market. And I wound up, building that business over the next like 2 years to $4 million a year. And kind of landing myself a partnership there, because people from the industry started seeing like, okay, Willie's back. He's good. I got a couple of VP of sales opportunities thrown at me. And so these guys gave me a third of the company to stay with them. And so I still own that company to this day. That was kind of the basis for turning my financial life around. And it allowed me to get back into cannabis cultivation, because I had a way to earn, every year I would get, significant distribution, and I could make investments.
So when you mentioned like having this moment of pause before you got into to back into cannabis of, can I handle this? What was that like? What was that thought process like? What were the things that really sort of were top of mind specific to that explicit decision, knowing that this could be an enormous opportunity and clearly has been? And what were the sorts of things you had to sort through for yourself to know that that is something that you felt comfortable to go forward with?
I was worried about how my parents would take it. I put my parents through a lot. And, the idea of letting them down again was really scary to me. I didn't tell them that I was doing it at first. And then eventually got to a point where it was like, okay, I have to tell them, because they're going to hear about it from somebody else, or they're going to know that I'm, every weekend going up to the mountains, to this property that I own all of a sudden. And so I did tell them and kind of explained to them, hey, I feel comfortable with this. And they trusted me to do it, and ultimately it's my decision anyways, but I really wanted their sign off, that they were supportive of it, and they've been supportive of it ever since.
Just to clarify though, are you completely cannabis free in terms of consumption, or do you consume cannabis, just not other things? Like, where are you standing on that stuff?
So I'm not against cannabis consumption in recovery. There's kind of like a hard line in AA where people have a problem with that. I certainly do not. I have pretty bad anxiety, and so I have tried cannabis in recovery and had panic attacks. And so unfortunately, it really just doesn't work for me. We produce a beverage, or we did until recently, produce a beverage here in Michigan called Wink. It's a low-dose THC seltzer.
We know Wink. We know Wink. We know them in Missouri.
So we were the
you guys were
you
were the co-man for that. Got it. Okay.
So I can take a Wink seltzer. It's like 2.5 milligrams of THC and 2.5 CBD. I did it before a REO Speedwagon concert last year, but on the regular basis, not imbibing and not taking THC.
So was the first step back into cannabis cultivation, was that after legalization in California, or were you still like right before that when you started this new business?
Pre-legalization.
So talk about that. So you get in pre-legalization, you probably get back into some of the old patterns of what you were doing on the distro side before recovery, and then how does it move from pre-legalization into now this new world of legal to now being in Michigan as the co-man of a brand we've heard of? Love to hear just sort of that path.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I 2014 was my first outdoor season. Prior to that, I had only grown indoor. Started off in 2006 with a single light in my garage, then to a 12 lighter in a bigger garage, then to actually a 7,000 foot warehouse double stacked. And so 2014 was my first outdoor season. I bought a property up on Jupiter Mountain in Northern California, and we went out there and set up. And then I wound up every year after that buying more property and expanding. So come 2017, I had 4 farms. My wife and I were living on one of the farms in northern Sonoma County, right on the Mendocino border, outside of Sea Ranch, a town called Annapolis, up in the coastal redwoods, and growing. And, California was going adult use, and one of the counties where I had property was not going adult use, Stanislaus. And then Sonoma County, where I had my property, the irrigation district wasn't allowing cannabis licensees to use their own groundwater. So I was going to have to capture enough rainwater to grow cannabis, and it just wasn't possible. We didn't get enough rain. So I was in a position where I had 4 pieces of property that I owned, that I had built infrastructure for cannabis cultivation, and I wasn't going to be able to use them in the legal market. And we had the big fire in 2017, the Santa Rosa fire. I smoked my whole crop out. Everything was covered with ash, smelled like smoke. And so I lost like $1 million that year, and had to liquidate the properties. My wife and I moved out to Calaveras County, Valley Springs, and settled down to just do construction, take a year. And then the opportunity came to come to Michigan. A friend of mine was from here. He had some connections to get licenses locally. And so I kind of thought about it for a minute, and I, said, I have so much experience doing this. It would be a shame to walk away from it right now. So I jumped back in, and yeah, I had the licensing deal for Stizzy here in Michigan for 2 years. We launched them in the state, and got them up to 250,000 units a month. And then, obviously we had the licensing deal for Wink, and we've manufactured for some other, large brands here too.
It's pretty impressive.
Very cool.
So one thing that me and you probably have in common that JM might have to sit on the sidelines for is that we've both lost 100 pounds in our lifetime. And I noticed you're wearing a Schmedium t-shirt right now. What was what got you into the health kick?
The guy with this top button, man. The professor got jokes today.
What got you into focusing on your health and wanting to lose weight?
This is actually a size large t-shirt.
Yeah,
but
you're a big dude. Yeah.
When I went to rehab, I weighed 300 pounds, and I remember walking up the stairs. It was an old mansion, Julia Morgan mansion in Berkeley, and I couldn't walk up the stairs without being winded. And I had been overweight my entire life, and so there was a bunch of dudes who were on release from federal prison there. And so we started doing prison workouts upstairs, the push-ups and dips and pull-ups. And so just by getting sober and going through rehab, and kind of they feed you, the food is great there. I cut carbs, and I lost 50 pounds, pretty quickly. And when I got out, I kept doing it. I kept working out. Me and a couple guys from rehab lifted weights. I never got control of my diet though. So I've been training hard for 10 years, 10, 12 years now, but only within the last year did I finally get control of my diet and have some discipline around eating. And so then the results came, relatively quickly. Once I dropped the fat, I had, the muscle underneath, and I'm, kind of bulking back up a little bit right now, but, I've also had some health, scares. I had, early stage heart disease, and I've had some AFib. So taking care of my health is of the utmost importance to me, because I got a 2-year-old son, and I got to make sure I'm here for a long time.
So
As
quick question before we talk about your family, because I know we definitely want to hear, you mentioned your wife a couple times on the good side of everything. So we definitely want to hear the origin story of that. But you mentioned you finally got your diet in order. I'm a huge ice cream fan that I can't seem to shake. There's like, ice cream and chocolate and candy, even like sour candy and stuff are my vices and still are. And I feel like I have 15 more pounds I could lose if I could just drop. You're swollen. He can call you medium, but clearly you're pretty jacked on that. What were the diet choices on your side that you've gotten under control? What were the vices that you were struggling with losing?
I mean, I eat everything like an addict. So like, ice creams, like I'm not eating anything less than a pint at a sitting, or cookies. I'm eating the whole box. If I go buy a king size Snickers, I'm not thinking about eating that kind of king size Snickers. I'm thinking about the fact that I'm going to want another one when I'm done with that one. And so I'm buying 3 or 4 at a time and eating 3 or 4 in a day. And so serious sugar junkie. And that was really the hardest thing for me to kick, was like that serious sugar addiction. It's harder than dope. They say that sugar is more addictive than cocaine, and I believe it.
So what have you done? So now that you've kicked it, or at least feel like you have it in better control, what are some of the things that you've done in order to get that under control? Because I agree with you on the addiction aspect of sugar.
Yeah, so I have every night I eat a big bowl of Oikos 000 yogurt, and I mix in either some protein powder if I need more protein for the day, or some dark chocolate cocoa powder, and it makes it like mousse. And I might throw some berries in there, and that for me kind of checks that sweet tooth box that I have, and it also puts me in bed full, because I'll wake up at 2:00 in the morning and I'll invent desserts in my pantry that didn't exist, that you've never heard of. Just from whatever sugar and chocolate I can find.
2-year-old will help you wake up for that too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I wake up on my own and just demolish. My wife would be like, "Where is all of like everything that we just bought yesterday?" Like, there was like, what happened? Like, I don't know. I woke up in the middle of the night and I ate everything.
I bet working out so much has something to do with the eating patterns and behaviors. Have you ever tried? I've been on an intermittent fasting kick. Have you ever tried full elimination diets or any kind of like diets like that?
Yeah, so I did the intermittent fasting thing. The problem was they're like, oh, if you intermittent fast, there's no way that you can possibly eat so many calories in a 6-hour window. It's like, watch me.
Bullshit.
I'll eat all the calories in 6 hours.
The question is, does he?
No problem.
But Joe, he does his fasting while also, I don't know if you know about jazzercising.
Where's the jaws?
But you might have noticed how
I got
defined.
the jazzercise.
Look, you both are gonna grab your jaw. Like he's got his jaw. Look, they both got their jazzercise.
There you go. Twinsies.
Let's go. I gotta get one now.
We're making podcast history here. This is great.
Jazzers, I love it.
Somebody call up the guys at Jazzercise and get this podcast sponsored.
Yeah, seriously. That is awesome. That just made my day. I'm like, so let's talk about the wife. Let's hear, how'd you meet the wife? Let's hear about that family story, because I know Joe and I are family guys ourselves. Yeah. And like you said, that really resonates with us.
Yeah, so she was a property manager. She managed homeowners associations. And so did her mom. And her mom was a client of mine. And I was at a trade show one day and she walked by and I was like, holy shit, who is that? And I turned to my to the guy who was working with me and I was like, I said, she will be mine. Oh yes, she will be mine. And I pursued her for a year and she rebuffed me. She was dating somebody. Her work wouldn't let her take gifts from vendors. I couldn't take her out to lunch. So I went after her mom and I buttered her mom up. I took her mom golfing. Took her mom to Warriors games, and I really laid it on thick. And so I told her mom, like, yeah, really, I want to date your daughter. And so her mom hooked me up, and kind of set it up. We rented out like a go-kart racing facility for an event, and her mom brought her with, and That was kind of, we started dating after that. And she has been incredibly supportive of this wild journey that I've been on. We've moved every 2 years. She moved with me up to the, redwood forest and live, this crazy, deep in the woods life. It was a beautiful house, but, we were an hour and a half from civilization. And so like, it was once we were up there, I was like, all right, she's down for the cause. I'm going to marry this woman. And I came back one day with a ring and a new tow behind generator. And I told her to come outside and look at this generator I just bought. And I got down on my knees and gave her a ring.
Nice. Love
Nice.
that.
Yeah.
And so you have the one kid. Is there any future kids on the way? Are you guys planning out anything else, or are you going to stick with the one for now? I've got 4.
Yeah,
So I might be the bantamweight when it comes to drugs and alcohol, but I am the heavyweight when it comes to rearing children in this group.
He still hasn't said he's done, and he's got 4. So let's just lay it out there.
We might be done. We're not sure yet, but yeah.
That's good. I mean, so we both would like to have more kids. It has been, like the cannabis industry is super challenging. And, we're here in Northern Michigan. We don't have family here. So it's been like, just us with no support, and me dealing with this real monster of a business. And so we haven't jumped back in yet, but I think long term, we do not want our son to be an only child. So.
Yeah.
And how old is he? You said 2?
Yeah, he turned 2
Nice.
2 weeks ago.
Oh,
yeah,
wow,
I know.
man.
I know the feeling of being on that island. Me and my wife were in Southern California for like 3.5 years with 3 kids and no family within 6,000 miles of us. So it's kind of daunting. We're now outside of Nashville. We're still kind of on an island without any family, but our families are just one state away. So North Carolina and Virginia. So feels a little bit better to be able to drive.
Couple dad.
I was there last weekend.
In Tennessee?
Oh, nice.
Looking at property in Fairview and Hendersonville. And
oh, man. Hit me up next time you come through. You can come. I live south of Franklin off 840 on Route 37. So College Grove, kind of between Franklin and Murfreesboro.
Nice. Very cool.
We
might be neighbors one day.
There you go. I love it. You guys can maybe Jazzercise together too. That'd be really nice. That'd be special.
Elite Jazzercise influencers.
Yeah, that'd be special. So a couple of dad tips for you, Willie. Not unsolicited. One is unfortunate for you. Terrible 2s continues through 3. So it's actually probably not very bad yet, and you might think this is the terrible 2s, but towards the end of the 3rd year and as they get closer to 4, the terrible 2s start to go away. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, and I've told this to a lot of folks that I work with within my day job today, when they have their first kid, it's like, congratulations, your life just changed with 1 kid. You mentioned your job being tough and challenging. Now you have this other thing that you have to keep track of. So you can't belly up to the bar whenever you want, and you can't just do all the things you're used to. And that's hard, but you get over it. 2 is when life is over. So just as you're planning towards the next one, like anybody that says it's zone defense with 3, they're full of shit. 2, life is over as you knew it, starts again. And then 3, I've got 3 is when it's just life's over, constant state of anarchy where you're just not in control anymore. So that's my natural birth control for today.
And 4 is when you just turn into a cyborg. So I wake up at 2:00 every morning and I do a full-time job before my full-time job starts. So
we are done at my house at 3. I can say very explicitly and with conviction. But I will say, and this is the thing that Joe mentioned, there's not a job in the world that I would rather have than be the dad of these 3 kids. So I say all that, but it is the greatest, most fulfilling and joyful thing that I have in my life. And it keeps the heartbeat to everything that I do, both personally and professionally. It's the connection with Joe, even, it's an additional level of our relationship, because we really subscribe to this idea that life is just a bunch of relationships, and keeping and cultivating those the best you can, and trying to keep as many of the bridges at least intact, or if they're not intact, try to build them back a little bit so you can get over. That's what it's all about. And the life that you end up learning being a dad is like nothing else, man. So I love the spirit of what you're saying, and I wish you all the best in making the next decision, whether you have another one or not. But enjoy the ride, man. It's pretty special.
So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
as you're out there dadding and reconstructing the world of cannabis, I've noticed you
Jaws are
growing a bit.
sizing while doing arm curls too. So
Jaws are sizing and the arm curls. I've noticed your social presence and your personal brand growing quite a bit. But you've also got Elite Cannabis Operators Mastermind. I've been around a few masterminds. I used to run Gary V's mastermind for him when I was there. Tell us a little bit more about some of those things you're doing to build up the Willie McKenzie brand, and how has the mastermind stuff been going? You meeting a lot of cool operators out there?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually, the reason I started bugging you was because I did one of the Sasha group things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've been a long time follower of Gary Vee and a bunch of other people who I respect. And, after doing other people's mastermind groups, I saw an opportunity to do one in the cannabis industry. It's something that's really needed because so many people are struggling, and there are people who are doing well. And so like the sharing of information is really important. Collaboration is really important. So it's been good. We have grown it in the last, 4 or 5 months up to 42 members.
Nice, man.
We've kind of split it off now into 2 cohorts, and it's been growing. And just the relationships, like the feedback I get from the people who are in the group has been really awesome. It's like really improving people's experience. People are getting a ton from it. And at the end of the day, like that really feels good to me.
A buddy of mine, Mike Raspatello, he was a guy I worked with on AB InBev. I don't know if you know Mike. He's got a property, 93 acres up in Parma, Michigan, a little bit more southern in Michigan, but he's pursuing the whole cannabis event space licensing stuff and working with corporations to come in and do cannabis retreats and stuff like that. But he might be somebody you want to hit up and talk to a little bit, because I think it'd be kind of fun to see Elite Cannabis Operators Mastermind in-person thing at one of his places.
Yeah, no, actually I had a call with Mike on Monday, and he asked me to help and advise him there. So I'm gonna see what I can do to help him get that thing going. He's a sharp guy. I like him a lot.
He is. Yeah, he used to do a lot of the digital measurement stuff for AB InBev. So he was always around point of sale, doing sampling events, like all that kind of stuff, really masterminding what was in the digital tool belt for the beer companies and stuff like that. But it's interesting. There's so many people from that space, from the beer space, that have gotten into cannabis. He probably has a huge portfolio of, or not, like Rolodex of people that he can introduce you to that are trying to become operators in cannabis.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed. You actually connected me to him on LinkedIn, and we jumped on a call. So I appreciate that. I'm stoked to know him, and it's a cool project that they got going down there.
I was ready to say Joe was a day late, dollar short on the connection, but he made the connection. So I guess my joke is flat. I got nothing.
I'm one step ahead of myself half the time. I make these connections just, kind of just, hey, this connection, that connection. Then I forget about them. I'm like, oh shit, I introduced you to Raspy. Cool. All right, let's go.
Yeah, well, you just threw it in a LinkedIn comment. It was a very, like it wasn't a big email or anything, but we both took the ball and ran with it. It's
so odd. I mean, you just don't. I'm sure you hear a lot more about it than I do, but like I don't see Michigan and cannabis in the same conversation all that often. But then I know Raspatel, I know you, and I'm like, that's a dot that should be connected.
It's growing, man. It's definitely
it's the second biggest market in the United States.
Yeah, we've been working I've been working a little bit in Missouri, which seems to be a pretty emergent market. What have you noticed about Michigan and some of these kind of like Midwesternish states? Like they seem to be very progressive when it comes to getting, laws on the books and doing things in a very aggressive manner. What have you noticed about Michigan that's different than, say, California?
Like per capita, people in Michigan smoke far more weed than people in California. A much smaller state. But I think like per capita consumption is like double what it is, the dollar spent per person. So that's pretty wild. Michigan has good growers. It was a long time. It was the second biggest medical market too. They had a decade of guys growing here. So there are, OG legacy brands that are very popular. Michigan has a ton of brands overall too. Like all the big brands have come from California, from Colorado, from the West Coast, and set up here. So, I mean, and then the prices here are incredibly low. The retail prices, you can get high for a little bit of nothing in Michigan. And it's unfortunate for the producers. But for a consumer, I don't think there's a better place that you could be than Michigan if you're a consumer of cannabis.
What's driving that? Is that the taxes? Like what ends up making the retail of that so different than other places? Is it the way that it's regulated or governed? Is it the taxes? Is it the market? What ends up driving that?
There's a group here that comes from the liquor store industry that was the dominant force in the medical cannabis space. And so they were kind of entrenched here. And they pretty much treated the, Michigan cannabis retail business like the liquor store business. And it was a race to the bottom. And they pushed it far further than, Michigan retail prices. Like everybody complains about how tough California is, but you can buy 15 vape carts for $100 in Michigan. You can buy ounces for $25, $50. You can buy, just incredible amounts of, I don't know if it's all super quality at those prices, but, you can buy incredible amounts of legal cannabis in Michigan for nothing. And the thing that frustrates me is that the consumers weren't asking for it. That was operator led, pushing, race to the bottom competition. And it really fucked the market here.
They don't even, what do they call the dispensaries up there? It's not always dispensaries. They have another name for it. I forget the name
Provisioning centers.
Provisioning
centers.
It sounds kind of dope though. I kind of like that.
Let me get provisioned right quick.
Do you guys have a pleasant? Do you guys have a pleasantries up there near where you're at, up in the Upper Peninsula area, northern Michigan?
Yeah, so there's a Pleasantries about an hour and a half away from here. We supply Pleasantries with our branded products. So I do know the Pleasantries guys.
What is your major focus of your company now in Michigan? What is it that you guys? I mean, you mentioned you co-manned a couple of different brands that we've heard of. What's sort of the mandate of your business today?
Well, we kind of specialize in sun-grown flower. That's really my background. It was something that cultivators in Michigan were not growing outside for smokable flower. The legacy market all grew indoors. And, people growing in the regulated market were growing for biomass. And so we set out here to grow Cali style outdoors. So we grow, 50,000 plants, full sun, native soil. And, it's like we're row cropping big cannabis plants and hang drying it, treating it nice, and then selling it as branded smokable flower. And it's been going well.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. What a cool story, man. Yeah, it's great. Thanks.
Well, so we'll start wrapping up here in a little bit, but is there anything you're in the process of trying to plug? Is there anything you want us to draw attention of our audience to? Anything, obviously
other than the Jazzerciser?
The Mastermind, but is there any kind of social media you want to plug here?
Yeah, I mean, my Instagram is Willie McKenzie Official. There I'm kind of focused on, men's issues would be more so than like the cannabis stuff, just because Instagram doesn't like cannabis. So I am trying to build kind of a separate side to my personal brand there. But yeah, Willie McKenzie, CEO on LinkedIn, and Willie McKenzie on YouTube.
So we have a segment that we like to call products and practices here, and it's usually aimed at what do you use to kind of keep yourself away from drugs and alcohol. But given that you've done this for so long and you actually went through a hardcore rehab process, we'll kind of switch it up a little bit. And I think the question I want to ask you is what fuels Willie McKenzie? What's your purpose? And I think I have an idea, but I want to draw it out of you and I have you tell me about what fuels your purpose.
I'll be honest, I got a pretty big chip on my shoulder. There were a lot of people who gave up on me when I was really sick. a business partner who was my best friend since 5 years old, a girl that I loved. And so I have been on a quest to prove everybody wrong ever since then. And it's like, I proved them wrong a long time ago, but I still now I guess I'm proving to myself that I'm as good as I've always thought that I was, if that makes sense.
That's awesome.
And being a good provider is my ultimate goal.
That's awesome.
I love that. I mean, we touched on this, and you said that maybe in the mirror is where you found this, but we talk a lot about different people that motivate people through different ways. And one that usually folks have listened to or heard is Goggins. And he talks about, he found this place that he can't really describe that ultimately allowed him to basically go even deeper into these different places. We subscribe to that fully, right? Regardless of whether it's eating or addiction or porn or any of these things, you got to find the place in you that allows you to really reflect on that and find the solution, right? And that's where this whole idea for us of Me Total came from. And it was we started talking about teetotalism and the people that abstained from alcohol during pre-prohibition era. And then they also were more like the 12 steps. They didn't consume any, they were straight edge. And for us, we're not here to tell you, similar to what you said, that you shouldn't maybe consume or drink a low dose beverage or have a little nibble of a gummy if that helps you in your recovery. We're not here to tell you the right path, but you do have to find that place. And it starts with us, right? It starts with yourself, and that's where the me came from. And so we've kind of gone with this mantra of Me Total. And what you just said aligns so closely to that, because the reality of the situation, it's all about becoming the best version of ourselves, right? And it doesn't matter how hard the process was to get here or how crazy of a story somebody like yourself has specific to the result or end could and maybe should have been so different. And here you are standing on the mountain saying, let's fucking go. And it's so impressive. I feel such inspiration coming from your story. And I'm, mostly excited to maybe join the mastermind and learn from you about this space, because we are, really desperate to find the right time to push what we think is going to be a pretty meaningful brand with a bunch of really good people around cannabis and this sort of micro-infused beverage, because ultimately it's going to be the thing, right? As soon as the stigma goes away, as soon as people understand how they can buy it, as soon as people are not asking, the fuck is this Delta 9 thing? Like, why can I buy this? Am I allowed to have this sent to my house? Like, do I really want to go in that store? As soon as that goes away and people realize the health benefit in comparison to the poison that alcohol is, who knows where it goes? And I would love for you, I hope that you'll stay in touch with us, or even, potentially come along for this ride with us, because I would love to have you as part of it if there's a way to make that happen. So Thanks for the time today, man. Killed it.
I love what you said when you were talking about being in rehab, how there's, you can't lie to anybody. You can't tell any stories. You can't weasel out of anything. It's just, this is who you are. And people have to like you based on you, so super powerful. I'm pretty excited that you get to live your life that authentically and get, all the accolades that you have. Well worth it. And congratulations at everything you've got going for you right now.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. Enjoyed chopping it up with you guys. Would love to chat about your entree into the beverage space. Actually, one of the guys in the group is the founder of Uncle Arnie's, which is the number one beverage in California. And he is a wealth of knowledge, is launched in 5 states, and would certainly be willing to, lend his expertise on the subject to you guys. He's an amazing character.
Awesome. We have a lot of cool things happening, both on kind of the platform side of cannabis, that we want to start potentially growing kind of a multi-state operation that we've got a couple of other partners and investors on, that we see FUZZEE ultimately being a component of, and some ideas particular to how best to do that. It sounds like you're somebody that could be a wealth of knowledge to help us on that. We're always looking for friends and partners in that aspect of the business. And then, to be able to think of you as a Me Total ambassador too, that really truly is embodying what we want this to be. If there's a way to sort of include that in the way that we work and function together and kind of build this better world in a place with a bunch more people living their best version, we're succeeding, right? And I'm super I'm confident we can find some really cool stuff to do together. So I'm so glad that our paths crossed today.
Great. All right,
Absolutely.
Willie,
Me too.
we're gonna let you go ahead and get going. Me and JM have to step back, and we're gonna do a little bit of a precursor for this show to our audience, and we'll do a wrap up and stuff like that. But Willie, we'll be in touch, and I mean it. Next time you're in Tennessee, come holler at me. I'll take you around. I'll introduce you to my realtors, and you can get cozy with a nice piece of land down here.
I will. My wife's on the phone with realtors like left and right. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you, we'll be down there. Cool,
All
man.
right.
Thank you guys. I appreciate you.
Yeah, nice to meet you, man. Appreciate you. Thanks.
Yeah, you too.
And thanks for joining us on the FUZZEE'ish podcast. You know where to find all of our episodes, fuzzyishpodcast.com, where you can find Willie's episode and many, many more. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on all of our social media, including Instagram. We love providing this podcast to all of you to be a beacon of support in the community. And any feedback you have for us, you know where to reach us. I'm Joe with JM, signing off. Hasta la
See
vista.
y'all.